Hey there, it's Zoë Routh, your friendly neighborhood leadership expert. That's a Canadian and Australian one. I am a team navigator. I'm an intrepid explorer of the leadership landscape. I work with teams and team leaders to move from frustrated and stuck in endless conversations going nowhere. Yeah, you've been there before, I'm sure. And we help them become high energy, fast flowing, high performers. Sounds like fun to me. And the other thing that's fun to me is this podcast. And in today's show, we have a special episode. We are going to showcase what's coming up on the show in terms of themes. And the theme for the quarter is leading strategy, and in particular, holacracy. If you don't know what holacracy is, don't worry. We explain it all. And the other special thing I'm going to do, I'm going to be reading the extract from my upcoming novel, The Olympus Project. Okay, I know you've been waiting with bated breath, so let's get into it.
Welcome to the Zoë Routh Leadership Podcast, where we share all things people stuff in leadership. Learn from leaders who have done the hard yards and learn from experience. Hear from expert authors about the latest insights from culture to strategy and messy people dynamics. Get tips and insights from multiple award-winning author and leadership expert herself, Zoë Routh. Now, on with the show.
So first things first, holacracy. What the heck is it? Well, holacracy is a radical self-managing principle that has been applied to organizations. It means getting rid of management. It's self-managing teams. Sounds as challenging as you can imagine. It's an interesting management principle. So we do away with managers and we get these self-organizing teams. And the idea is that it enables teams to make better decisions faster on the ground in real time in a highly democratized environment. Is it the best way forward for every organization? Possibly not. And certainly some of my guests are avidly against it in the season coming up. And yet, there are some really interesting aspects to it that we can definitely apply to whatever our context is in terms of empowering people, making decisions better and faster are some examples. The book that we're reading in Amplifiers for this quarter that supports this exploration of holacracy is Team of Teams by General McChrystal, who is a former U.S. military general. And it is a famous book, and it's an awfully good book. And I like their approach to building flexibility and autonomy in teams, which isn't quite holacracy, and yet there are parallels there. So we'll be talking about that book along the way too. So that's what's coming up in the season ahead. How can you build more flexible, more adaptable, semi-autonomous, or maybe completely autonomous teams so that your organization can thrive and adapt in a fast-moving environment? All right, so that's the theme, and that's what's coming up. And I promised you the preview of the novel. This is drumroll, The Olympus Project, which I have been working on for 18 months now, and it's still not out. Oh my goodness, this project is taking forever. And yet, I hope you enjoy it. So what I'm going to read, first of all, is the blurb that I've been working on about the book, so to give you a little bit of context about the Olympus Project. Why am I sharing with you my fiction book? And that's exactly what my business manager, Louise, was asking me. Why are we doing a fiction book? It's not just a story. I wrote this book because I started with the premises. I wonder if fiction might be a better platform to deliver leadership messages. And I went, that would be an interesting writing challenge. Then I thought about the leadership themes I wanted to explore, and some of them were around power. How do people seek power? How is power wielded? Can we resist the temptations of power? That's one aspect of it. Then I also wanted to explore what will leadership look like in the near future as climate change possibly ramps up in terms of its outcomes and effects on the planet. How do we need to rethink how we do leadership? How do we need to rethink how we do communities? And that sort of grew from there. So there's elements of how do we respond to our changing environment? How do we handle power and the reconstruction of these new dynamics? And the third question was a possibility question. Can we design processes and environments that accelerate human development? So that's what I was interested in designing and writing this book. And then it just became playful and fun along the way. So here is the overview blurb about the book, and then I will read the first chapter for you. I feel like I need to clear my throat or something. Okay, here we go. Humanity is being pushed to the edge of habitable land. With climate change making inland living and farming near impossible, rising sea levels also squeeze people into smaller strips of territory along coastal landscapes. The world design industry emerges to create human habitats to sustain the struggling human population, floating worlds, underwater havens, and vertical farming communities. Meanwhile, space tourism and trade is gaining steam in spite of the widespread protests from Earth First activists and the green economy movement. The Lunar Commission runs a competitive bid to build the Olympus Project, the first human habitat on the moon that will service research, asteroid mining, and tourism havens for wealthy patrons. Prestigious world design organization, Gaia Enterprises, recruits a star team for the Olympus Project bid. With egos and ambition running hot, renowned designers Troy Bruin, Xavier Consis, and Xanthi Waters lead the team selection process. While Troy is bored with his hedonistic lifestyle and seeks new stimulation, Xavier is torn between the duty of a father and the pull of fame and prestige. Meanwhile, Xanthi wrestles with her own inner demons, the values conflict with her Earth-first husband, and the desperate longing to escape the painful memories of loss in the terrible tsunami. The selection process is arduous. Cracks emerge in the Gaia leadership team as they fight over candidates. With setbacks hampering the prototype build, tension in management turns deadly serious. Conflicts in vision and approach threaten to undermine the operation, especially when a terrible secret from the past emerges that casts doubt on the ethics of the founders. Meanwhile, the crew draws closer together in spite of their differences until sabotage is revealed. Can the team reconcile enough to win the chance to build humanity's next home? There you go. I hope that was a great teaser for you. And we will now get into chapter 1. The chair rattled and shook her violently. Xanthi felt the skin of her face grow taut and strained. Then suddenly there was weightlessness, relief, and the view of the world below, a soft, blue, mottled curve against the black forever of space. Awe swelled within her, and as it did every time she snuck into the VR simulation hub for a joyride. All too soon, they re-entered the Earth's orbit, landed, and the lights burned bright, assaulting her senses. Back now in the VR room with its bland walls and disappointing reality. Xanthi trudged into the change room along with the other punters and stripped off her well-worn, hired sensor suit. She slipped out to the stinking hot streets of Sydney. Poor Sydney. A pale version of its former glorious self. The city had survived the long years of COVID, the first pandemic. But then subsequent viruses had sent city dwellers scurrying for the country. Towering office blocks stood empty like soulless sentinels. The ground floor windows, at first bright with hopeful for-lease signs, were boarded up and smattered with graffiti. The for-sale signs came and fell next, like autumn leaves trodden underfoot. The tsunami washed out the rest, wrecking the beautiful harbor with devastating backwash. It was only when the drought and the rising inland heat sent people back to the coast that Sydney experienced its latest renaissance. Old commercial properties were repurposed for inner-city living. New density requirements crammed people into renovated eco-buildings, brimming inside with vertical greenery, coated on the outside with plants to keep the building cool. These often formed a hydroponic sleeve, feeding the building's inhabitants with a vertical farm. Xanthi stopped on a corner and looked up. This was one of her prized projects. As chief designer, she had turned this old corporate tower into a family oasis. The entrance was resplendent with trees and tropical flowers. The exterior heaved with plant life and a few remaining birds grateful for a cool haven. Her smartest innovation was the network of clear plastic tunnel slides that allowed people to navigate quickly between floors and habitat stations with ladders on the outside. She had managed to create a community where all food, entertainment, and social interactions were self-contained. No one needed to brave the heat of the day ever again. She called it the Pantheon. She smiled at the arrogance. Hell, she'd earned the right. Xanthi took another moment and squinted up at the Pantheon, then pulled the sunshade over her brow. It was barely dawn, but the heat was baking already. It was late to be out, and Simon would be waiting. Simon always knew when she'd been to the VR hub. Somehow, he always guessed. Was it the longing she tried desperately to hide? Was it the telltale sweat stench from the overused VR suit still clinging to her? The disdain would crawl over his face. Why do you bother? Falling into the crass commercial claws of the big tech oligarchies. Such a betrayal. And the lecture would continue, always the same, always bitter. He was an Earth advocate, as she had been. Still was. Mostly. Simon was committed to the salvation of Earth. He believed that technology should be deployed to rectify the climate disasters that ravaged the planet, not for some billionaire's folly to colonize other planets. He did appreciate the logic that life on Earth was ultimately doomed, since it would eventually boil dry as it got closer to the expanding sun. But that was still billions of years away. Life was happening now. Whichever philosophical or spiritual lens you put on it, Earth was humanity's home, and we should embrace our fate alongside it. Why poison other planets with our ineptitude? Better get the management of this one right. Xanthi heard his words echo from their last argument. She agreed with him on many points. Yes, Earth was sacred. Yes, it was beautiful and worth saving. But she tried to add, in spite of his eye-rolling, consciousness was valuable too, and we had a moral responsibility to help it survive our planet's eventual doom. That usually sparked a diatribe about the responsibilities of the wealthy and the outrageous waste of money on space tourism. She often backed down at this point. It was hard to argue with the money side of things. Xanthi wasn't quite ready for another confrontation. She took the long way home and headed towards the harbor. It drew her there. The sea's siren song plucked her heartstrings, mournful. There on the harbor, with the dawn licking the sky with a harsh red tongue, Xanthi felt the rush of the tsunami once again. The dreadful roar and the incomprehensible power of the water that picked her up and threw her forward in a turbulence that choked all other sound. It was a moment, only a moment, the relief of breath, then the awful realization of loss. So much horrible loss. As a paramedic, the despair was overwhelming. So many people they tried to save and couldn't. So many people lost. As the grief subsided, Xanthi found new purpose in the wake of the tsunami. She abandoned her job as a paramedic and dove into cleaning up the city. She worked first with the salvage crews, then trained with Gaia Enterprises to design new communities. She believed in resurrection, in renewal. The Phoenix, Lazarus, and all those old tales. They would make something glorious of this old, wrecked, debris-strewn city. They would find beauty even as the world tore her heart in two. They would salvage what they could from the vengeful earth and create something wonderful, beautiful, and worth living for. I thought I'd find you here. Xanthi jumped a little, startled from her reverie, and turned away from the water she had been staring over. Maya. Though she was surprised, her voice came out flat. What are you doing here? Xanthi eyed the older woman with her impossibly smooth brown skin and noticed the trace of a few lines at the corner of her eyes, deeper now than when she had last seen her. I've come to see you. Maya's face was gentle, filled with love, her dark eyes deep. You could swim in those eyes, thought Xanthi, drown in them. She shuddered slightly. How are you, Xanthi? Xanthi considered Maya, then looked out again at the water. A wind stirred the surface, the hot wind rising already. I'm fine. They both knew it wasn't true, but true enough. Maya took Xanthi's arm in hers and steered her along the shore that was one of the first areas they repaired. After. People needed a place to go, to think, to breathe. Why are you here, Maya? Xanthi knew Maya did not make house calls for former employees. We've got a new project to tender for, Maya said. Xanthi frowned. Why not use the holocall? Save travel, quicker, and since when did a project tender require in-person visits? There was so clearly more behind this than a simple tender. Xanthi waited and let the silence draw Maya's words from her. It's something new for Gaia Enterprises. Something audacious. Xanthi found this surprising. Audacious? Gaia has always been audacious, Maya. It's why I joined Gaia in the first place. Land reclamation communities that span the globe. Floating worlds. rebuilding flood-ravaged cities. And what could be more audacious than the underwater worlds? Xanthi stopped to look Maya full in the face. What was she playing at? Gaia Enterprise had been one of the salvations of climate change-ravaged Earth. After the droughts, the tsunamis, the rising sea levels, Gaia Enterprise was helping humanity adapt to the devastation it had wrought. It was creating new habitats. Although, not fast enough, thought Xanthi. Climate refugees were clinging to life, eking out an existence close to the water, living in the shadows during the day to stay out of the heat. Even now, she could feel their eyes on her and Maya, hiding in the rubble of ruined buildings in makeshift shanties. Xanthi and Maya were out too late in the day already. The sun burned the air around them. Xanthi felt the sweat soaking her thin cotton robe. Desert wear, in a city by the sea. What new project, Maya? Maya held her gaze, then looked away. We are putting in a bid for the moon. Xanthi stared, aghast. You're kidding, she cried. The moon? Since when did Gaia abandon Earth? This went against all Gaia principles. As its very name indicated, Gaia was about the Earth, not space. I know it sounds like a change. A change? This is sacrilege. Gaia Enterprises is about restoring human life on planet Earth. For years, we've battled the space cowboys in their crazy quest to colonize Mars. All the money, all those resources that could be saving lives, here on Earth. Xanthi fumed, and she heard it too in her own words. For years, we've battled. We. Even after all these years, she still felt the pull back to her designer origins. Maya waited until Xanthi had vented her outrage. I thought the same at first. Again, Maya hooked her arm through Xanthi's and guided her towards some shade at the corner of an old building. But this is an opportunity to promote Gaia's work and vision here on Earth. A moon project will show how beautiful Earth is, how it is worth preserving, worth saving. There is no better view of the planet than from space, as well you know. Xanthi froze. How did Maya know about her VR hub visits? She kept it all secret, apart from Simon. Simon. Damn him. He must have told Maya. His own bitterness and frustration, the old wound between them, a heaviness like a scab on their relationship, big and ugly and misshapen, even as it aimed to protect them both from the cancerous pain. Why are you telling me this, Maya? I'm not part of Gaia's pool of designers anymore. I know. But we're making a special call out. We need skills like yours. You've got the medical background and successful world design experience. Perfect for the complex designs needed for the moon. And I personally appreciate your community focus. She paused and glanced at Xanthi. I know you didn't like the direction Gaia was heading with its commercial decisions, but sometimes leadership means making choices that look bad in the short term if the long term is served. Come on, Maya. I don't buy into the ends justifying the means. It looked like a sellout to me. I prefer to think of it as a borrow in. Really? Gaia Enterprises agreed to build a new Disneyland, for crying out loud. Let me try that again. Really? Gaia Enterprises agreed to build a new Disneyland, for crying out loud. Hardly helping climate refugees as far as I can see. Maya smiled at that. There's always room for joy in the world, Xanthi. Besides, that project allowed us to invest in terraforming technology. Not everything that looks like indulgence has no value. In any case, Gaia has gone from strength to strength. The worlds we've built are creating new hope for people around the planet. For its part, the Olympus Project is a little like the Disneyland one, except that the outcome is not just for joyrides. It's also for asteroid mining and research. If we win the bid, it will give us another revenue stream that will advance our Earth salvage mission, and will take an ongoing management fee once the base is established. That fee will fund multiple projects we've been longing to launch here on Earth. Xanthi was quiet as she considered Maya's elaborate business plans. Maya continued. We're opening up selection for the Olympus Project bid to applicants from other design companies. No more than one applicant per company to try and narrow the pool. We're expecting a huge amount of interest. Gaia has never opened its doors to other designers for any project, and we suspect there will be a few wanting to get a shoe in. We're running a selection to put together a design and deliver team. The team will work the prototype as part of the project bid. If the bid is successful, that team will build the project together on the moon. Xanthi gasped. Off-planet world building. It wasn't just about the design, it was the build too. But regardless of what Maya said, it was the antithesis of Gaia. Why were they abandoning their principles? And if you can't beat them, join them? Selling the value of Earth from space? Come on. There was more going on here aside from some possible future management fee. The moon. Against her will, Xanthi's heart pounded with excitement. The VR hub had been her secret indulgence, a place to escape the pain that dogged her days on Earth. The chance to actually travel off-world, to space, to the moon. Was she a hypocrite for wanting to experience the beauty of Earth from afar? Maybe it would help her to find some peace again. Or maybe she just wanted to run away. And the moon was about as far away as she could get. So far. The Mars plan was not quite in reach, in spite of the billions the space cowboys had thrown at it, not to mention the 26 lives already burnt in the pursuit. "What do you want from me?" Xanthi asked finally. "I want you to be part of the core design team. We need 3 lead designers and then a pilot, a mechanic, and life support specialist to make up the team of 6. Guy would like you to be the 3rd designer. With your medical background and proven community design skills, you'd balance the team nicely." Wow. I'm honored. Shocked, but honored. I need some time to think about this, Maya. Of course, it's a big commitment. Just out of interest, who are the other 2? Troy Bruin and Xavier Consis. Oh my God, the superstars. Maya smiled. She was proud of these Gaia designers and was always delighted by the impression they made. Xanthi took a deep breath. "Okay, tell me more," she said. There you go. That's chapter 1 of the Olympus Project, and the fun begins. I can't wait to bring this novel out to you, and I hope you get as much pleasure and insight from it as I did writing it. Of course, we'll let you know when it's ready for purchase and the pre-sales go on special and all that kind of stuff. But that's just a little taster. If you're excited by it or have questions or comments, feel free to write me, Zoe@zoerouth.com. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. I wish you all the best for a great day ahead, wherever you're listening. In the meantime, live well, lead well.
You've been listening to the Zoë Routh Leadership Podcast with leadership expert Zoë Routh. For more about people stuff and to contact Zoe, go to zoerouth.com.